Hello, everyone. I'm Senator Bob Casey. I represent Pennsylvania in the Senate. I'm here with Peter Morley, who's done more than most Americans could ever do to make sure that we wage a fight, and it has to be a fight, I want to be blunt about that, against efforts to destroy or undermine or take adverse action against the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Republicans in this town, in the House and in the Senate, and led by President Trump, have tried everything they can, vote after vote, to destroy what the American people built with this new legislation. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary, and I'm going to dedicate every waking moment I have to stopping any efforts to destroy or badly undermine these important health care protections. So I wanted to start with Peter and ask Peter just if you can walk through how you came to this fight. I've referred to you earlier as a warrior, and you are, but this is the kind of fight where we're going to need a lot of warriors to defend this important legislation. But tell us your story and some of the work you've been doing.
Well, first of all, thank you, Senator. I've watched you fight for people like myself, people with chronic illness, people with multiple. I have over 10 pre-existing conditions. I stopped counting after 10. Some of my pre-existing conditions I can't even pronounce, but my biggest pre-existing condition is lupus, and I've also survived cancer twice. And it is a big concern to me. I came into this fight out of necessity because I was afraid of my own protections being stripped away from me. I've lived in a world where I didn't have protections from pre-existing conditions, and I've suffered financially from that in the past. And I wouldn't want to see myself or millions of other people return to that world where insurance companies can discriminate against us. So I came into this fight. I thought it was going to be a one-time visit, and this is my 32nd visit. And I'll keep coming back here as long as it takes, because it's so important to engage with our members and to remind them why they're fighting and who they're fighting for.
And I think it's important that people hear stories like yours and the burden that you've had to carry that would be made a lot worse if Republicans in Washington get their way. And I think we should also be very clear about what they're doing. Every piece of legislation they've offered would destroy the protections for a pre-existing condition. We know that almost half of the American people have a pre-existing condition. I guess the one estimate I saw is about more than 133 million, I think it was. So in my state, it's roughly 5 million out of a population of a little less than 13. So it's almost 1 out of every 2 people. And yet the administration and every Republican in the House and the Senate, I want people to know that, are supporting a lawsuit which would destroy the Affordable Care Act and take away those protections. And if a Republican member of Congress says that that lawsuit will not take away those protections, they are lying, because that's exactly what's happening.
It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, and I have to agree with you. And you know, there have been bills that have been put in place, but they're very empty bills. They're empty promises. I know Senator Tillis proposed something about protecting pre-existing conditions, but it's an empty bill, and healthcare organizations have pointed out how empty it is. We need the president to come out and say that the Department of Justice does not support this lawsuit, and to remove the protections for pre-existing conditions, and he won't do that. He hasn't done that.
He could do that today. And if they were serious about it, they would withdraw from the lawsuit or withdraw their support for the lawsuit, the Department of Justice. And then the president would, and this is a dream, but let's go with it, then the president would propose legislation that would definitively protect pre-existing conditions or coverage for it, and maybe cover other people another way. But the reason why they've never been able to come up with that bill is because it doesn't exist.
Right.
There aren't 13 ways to do this. There's a reason why it took decades to pass legislation, and they're not serious. And the only way they could be serious, or they could demonstrate their seriousness, is withdraw from the lawsuit, stop the sabotage of the exchanges that the administration is engaged in, and stop proposing cuts to Medicare and Medicaid that amount to trillions of dollars over 10 years.
That's horrifying for somebody like myself with so many, like I depend on my health care. And, the other thing too is, as you pointed out, is that the Affordable Care Act it's more than just the marketplace. It covers, it's a policy that covers more than 130 million with pre-existing conditions. It expanded Medicaid to expand about 17 million people onto Medicaid. It affects 12 million people on Medicare. 2.4 million adult children on their parents' plans. So this is something that does not affect people just directly on the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so many millions of people that aren't aware are going to be affected. And we just have to keep getting that message out there.
Yep.
So if you're listening, remember, you or your family can be affected.
Yeah. And this is America. We finally reached the point where these protections were in place. We finally reached the point where we started to greatly expand the number of Americans covered by expanding Medicaid, mostly, and having the exchanges. And what they want to do is go backwards, back to the dark days where someone with a pre-existing condition, whether it's cancer or heart disease or diabetes or whatever they suffer from, to have those people go back to the dark days of not having basic coverage, basic protections. That is not American. That is contrary to the American story. And I'll work with any Republican who says, I don't support the lawsuit, I don't support the sabotage or the cuts. If I can get them to support those three changes in policy, I'll work with any of them. But until they do that, I'm going to work every day to defeat what they're trying to do.
And I will work to support you, so thank you so much.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your good work for so many Americans.